Hi, I'm Sarah Starshine, and I am feeling magical today.
Okay, so we're a couple weeks out now from Uncanny Experience, and that was so much fun. And this was your
Yeah.
first one attending, right?
Yeah, it was my first year.
What'd you think?
It was incredible. I went by way too fast though. I remember thinking like on the plane, like it's already starting. That means it's already almost over.
It does. It goes by extremely fast, and then
Yeah.
yeah, you feel like before you know it, Sunday's ending and everybody's hugging, and then you're just home, and then you're like, why can't I just go back? Like, why can't I just do it
Yeah.
all over again right now?
Yeah. I need a whole week of uncanny. At
And
least 3 days. Give us 3 days.
yeah, and there's also a sin, I believe, that it's only once a year. So it's like once it's
Yeah.
over, then you just sit there and go, okay, September next year, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems way too far. Yeah.
Was it everything you thought it would be?
Honestly, yeah. I remember when the first one happened, I was sick in bed just watching all of the pics and the videos and just thinking, oh, I wish I could be there so badly. But it worked out. But yeah, I was just counting down until and then I I think I expected more of myself. I thought I'd be able to do all the things when I was there, and it ended up just being a lot of connecting with people and talking and catching up and giving out hugs and just finally meeting all these people that I've feel like I've known forever through this community. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's definitely there. I remember going into the first one, I like looked at the schedule and had like my list of all the ones I was going to attend, all the different panels and classes, and I'm like from this hour to this hour
Yeah.
to this hour, and ended up maybe getting half of them just because I kept getting distracted by people and stuff. And,
Yeah.
same thing like you were saying, oh my God, we've followed each other on Instagram forever. Oh my God, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. Let's get selfies and then chit chat. And then before you
Yeah.
know it, that hour's gone. And you're like,
Yeah.
okay,
And then you've got to eat, like remember to eat and
that's the hardest
take
part.
breaks. Yeah, it really is. But it was nice with the venue. They did have, a dining area where you could eat or you could eat outside. You could go grab food and then eat outside, which was really nice. And they had water too. I wish every con had water that was just free and right there on, every level because that's the one thing I always forget to drink enough water or eat and they made it so much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. The only legit recommendation, like hardcore recommendation I'd have for them is get a permit to have a couple food trucks outside. Like that
Yeah.
would be amazing. Like just be like, oh, I'm just dressed as an X-Man character and I'm just gonna walk out here and get a couple tacos and then walk back in.
That would be amazing though.
Did you
Would
catch do you know Nikki Koala Bear cosplay?
I know of
Um
her on Instagram. I
she's
got to meet
been
her briefly.
yeah, she's really cool. She's one of my close friends. And speaking of the food thing, she was cosplaying as Domino both
Yes,
weekends. I don't know if you saw her on Sunday walking
I
around with like the
did.
box of Dominoes. And I'm such an idiot. It was like
Yeah.
it wasn't until Monday that I got the joke. Like all of a sudden Monday it hit me. I'm like, oh my God.
It took me a minute too. But I saw her outside when they were delivering it and I thought, "Oh, that's such a great idea. We should get pizza." And not even thinking she's dressed
Yeah.
as Domino holding the Domino's box.
It was so great. And I had to DM her, be like, I'm an idiot. I just now got that joke. And she was like, you weren't the only one. So like, I think everybody just saw pizza box and thought food. And that's like
Yeah.
where everybody's mind went. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So you are this is really cool because you're like relatively new to the cosplay scene.
Yeah.
So like totally switching gears on that note, what first got you into cosplay and how's the journey been for you?
Yeah, so one of my closest friends. She's been doing this, I mean, over a decade, and I've always kind of watched from afar and see just how much fun she's had with it. And I've always thought, I that looks like so much fun, but I don't have the time, or it looks, I don't have the resources to make, a costume like her. And so I just never really did. I kind of went to a con here and there, but didn't really dive all in. And then the pandemic hit, I was stuck at home and I had just gotten back into reading the comics with House of X and Powers of X, and just the timing of everything just kind of gave me that push that I needed to just jump in. And I saw a lot more people posting on Instagram, just, they're making really fun videos and just doing cosplay challenges. And I thought that is so much fun. It looks really cool. I want to see like what that's like. And so I had, like I said, I just read Powers of X and House of X. And so Marvel Girl had the classic 60s dress again. And it felt perfect timing for it. So that was my first one. I did a little bit different of a look. I went with Art Germ did a picture of her going through the portal, and it was more of like a gold sheen to her mask. And I really love the idea of that. And so I did my first one was the Marvel Girl dress, but with the green and the gold accents instead of the yellow to kind of make it a little more moody looking. And maybe if the MCU were to adopt it, more in line with what they would do versus the bright primary colors. So yeah, and I've just been going since. I started going to more conventions and I've got the bug now, so I'm here. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, once it bites a hold of you, that's kind of it, you know.
Yeah,
I went, God, I think I went to my first con in like '07, '08, somewhere in there. And I'd always see the
yeah,
cosplayers and I always thought they were awesome. Me personally,
same.
self-confidence wise, I'm like, yeah, but I'm not gonna do it. Like I'm not gonna get that nerdy. Come on now, guys. I mean, it looks awesome on you and I'm glad you're happy, but there and in reality what it was just self-defeating. Like I'll
Yeah,
never look as cool as that, so why bother? You know what I mean? And
right.
yeah, it was just a little over 2 years ago for Dragon Con. I was going to Dragon Con for the first time and somebody was like, "Oh, hey, you should cosplay." And for some reason, I just said, "Okay."
Yeah. And
And
what was that cosplay? What
that
did you
was
do?
Billy Butcher from The Boys.
Oh,
Um,
that was in Creative Cosplays magazine, right? I think are you in
was
that?
I don't know. I don't think so. I was in something. It was
I've
kind of one
seen
of
it.
those.
I've seen
I
it.
found out about it like a month later because for some reason I wasn't tagged or anything, and I was like,
Oh
I
no.
don't. I legitimately maybe it was Cosplay Alliance or well, I don't remember.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I did that for the first time, and then just like you, like now the bug's there. Now it's like I swear 60% of my brain is occupied every day with what's my next cosplay and what do I need to
Yeah,
get done for it.
me too.
So when you do the cosplay, do you have like background like sewing, EVA foam, any of that kind of stuff, or are you just sort of like learning as you go?
I'm kind of learning as I go. I have a little bit of sewing knowledge, but it's very basic. And that's been my biggest goal with this year and next year is just really dive in. I have a 2-year-old at home, so my time is more limited than it was prior to having him. So I have to find that time to devote to it. Um, And then my husband is a carpenter, so
Mm.
he helps me with my props and my accessories. So, like with my Marvel Girl, he helped me with the belt buckle. He made it out of wood. I have a new X-Men jean that I do that has a pretty elaborate belt. And he made that all out of wood as well. My magic sword, he helped me make that. So he kind of has become my prop maker and just listens to all my crazy ideas and makes them come true. So
Yeah, somebody who has three kids, I sympathize with that. I understand that completely.
yeah,
They're fun. 2 years old is a great age. That is such a fun age.
yeah,
Not and I can't throw shade on any other age because mine are about to turn 13 and 9, and that's still an amazing age.
yeah.
And they're at the age now where they're like starting to do cosplay stuff.
Oh, love that.
Although, yeah, it blows your mind. Like maybe you think this way. Like if my parents were into cosplay when I was a kid, that would have been the coolest thing in the world. There are
Yeah.
times to my kids, it's just kind of like, oh yeah, it's something mom and dad do, and every once in a while I do it, and it's like, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like we've
Yeah.
got 3D printers running printing props, and me and your mother are always outside sanding and painting, and they're just like, okay, I don't
Yeah.
understand it, but
No, I feel that. I think it would be so much cool. So cool if I could have gone to conventions as a kid and just be in that world. I feel like I missed out on so many years of having that because I started so much later.
Hmm.
But yeah, if I had
Yeah.
it as a kid, that would have been so cool.
Yeah, and it was I don't it was I remember going to I when I said my first con was like '07 or 08, I'm lying. My first one would have been
Yeah.
sometime in the '80s because my dad was really into tabletop gaming. So he would go to these like
Oh,
conventions
wow.
that were like then these like pretty much predated what we consider to be modern Comic Cons.
Yeah.
So but they'd have these huge convention halls and there would be a Star Wars tabletop game and a Star Trek and you'd get people here and there who would cosplay. But back
Yeah.
then, cosplay was a different, totally different beast. Like people just had to use literally pause still frames
Yeah.
from VHS tapes to get reference. You couldn't go on the internet and be like, how there were no YouTube how-to videos. You'd see somebody
Yeah.
show up as Chewbacca and you're like, they made that just by trying in sheer will, and that's pretty phenomenal.
That is incredible to think. I mean, so much stuff is mass produced now too, so it's so much easier. Yeah, even when my friend had, like I mentioned, that friend who had been doing it for over a decade, it was it was like that too, even at that time. She was like the early two, well, 2010s, I guess. And um yeah, everything you couldn't buy it, or if you did, it was custom and very expensive. Everything she did, she had to make it with hopes and prayers and just you just hope that it lasts the length of the convention and then if it made it through, then you're good.
Have you been there? Speaking of which, have you been there at a con where like a cosplay is just like deteriorating before your eyes and you're like hoping it'll just hold together long enough and then eventually, yeah, if you ever have the
Yeah.
one like, yeah, I gotta abort. This is not holding together well.
Yes. Yeah, I my Queen Maeve, the last most recent time I wore her a lot longer than I normally do. And I had glued with spray adhesive the boot. There's like a decorative boot detail, and I had just bought my own boots, some cheap, I mean, that's a lesson there. Don't buy cheap boots, but I did. And I had used spray adhesive to get the top of the boot on there, and they were just flying, like flailing on the boots by the end of the night. And I just ripped them off at the end of it. I'm like, nobody look at my boots. It's just, it is what it is.
Yes.
And like the paint's like peeled off the boots, and oh gosh.
Yeah. There's one piece of advice I can give to any con goer. Take care of your feet, whether you're cosplaying or
Yes.
not, because your feet will get torn up so fast. I've done that before where I bought a pair of cheap boots trying to save a little bit of money on the cosplay, and then you get into like
Yeah.
wearing them for like an hour into the con, and your feet are like throbbing nerve ends, and it's just oh god,
Yeah.
it sucks.
Especially once you're in your 30s and beyond. I just feel like it just
Yeah.
maybe when you're in your 20s and teens you could do it, but
Yes, yes.
not anymore.
When we were at Uncanny Experience, my wife and I we got up there on Friday, and I had a photo shoot, a Star Wars photo shoot Friday night in Minneapolis, and then after that we went to Target. This was my intention, and I bought a brand new pair of
Yeah.
tennis shoes before Uncanny started Saturday morning. Let me tell you, that weekend was a dream on my
That's
feet,
smart.
rather than showing up with like 3-year-old sneakers and your feet are
Yeah.
killing you.
No, I need to remember that for next year. Try to find some a cosplay where I can be more comfortable.
Right.
I wore boots all weekend and my feet were dead by the end of it. It's
Yes,
just
yes. And I had Sunday, I had the easiest cosplay I've ever done in my life. For those of you, I don't know who, like some people listen to this pod might know, but I was cosplaying as the cameraman from X-Men 97, which was the easiest one to do because it was literally just tennis shoes, like khaki shorts, a white
yeah.
shirt, and like a pullover button-up shirt, and then a backwards hat. I kind of just felt like I was dressed as myself. And most people told, oh, I didn't even realize you were cosplaying. And I'm like, no, well, yeah, it was awesome though.
I love that. I'm sad that I didn't even notice it. That was a
Yeah.
big deep, that's a deep cut.
Well, and it was a deep cut, and
I love those.
the reason why is that Sean Gacka, who's the producer for X-Men 97, there has been this joke running before we even knew each other that we were doppelgangers. And
Yeah.
in the show, they designed that cameraman to be him. So we had both decided ahead of
Oh
time
my
we were going to
gosh.
cosplay that cameraman that day. And because we were wearing the same clothes on top of it, the amount of people who got us confused with each other was absolutely hysterical.
That's amazing. I've seen the picture of the two of you together and it made my day. It's just incredible. I love
Yes.
that he was also so down to to do that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the year before, I don't know if you heard the story, the year before he got in trouble because he
Oh
called
no.
in sick to work to go to Uncanny. And then he did everything in his power to stay off all pictures, cameras, everything. And then the Uncanny Experience posted a couple pictures on their Instagram that had me in it. And his boss thought it was him and called him into his office
Oh
first thing
my
Monday
gosh.
morning and was like, and Sean's like, I don't even know who that guy is, but that's not me.
Oh my gosh. Well, now I feel like you have to parent trap it. You have to
Right, yeah.
you need to do something next year.
Yeah, we keep having this running joke that I'm just gonna like show up to his job, where they're working on X-Men '97 season 2. That I'm just gonna like show up
Yeah.
at his job as him and just start making decisions. But
That is amazing.
speaking of that, were you
Yeah.
into the X-Men '97 show?
I was. Yeah. I was religiously watching it every week.
Hmm. Were you a
Yeah.
fan of the original growing up, or were you kind of like watch it and then went back and watched the original?
I watched the original growing up, but I didn't watch it consecutively. It was just the
Hmm.
kind of thing that when it was on Saturday morning, I would, sit down and watch it, but I didn't watch it. I went back later on and kind of went through from the beginning because they were all over the place when I saw them. But it didn't matter. Like you didn't really have to see them in order to really follow it. So,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
and that age, that era, like that's what you had to do,
Yeah.
right? Because for us, that
Yeah.
predated DVR. That was
Hmm.
back when like you almost had to like set a VHS
Yeah.
tape up on your VCR to record it. And so if you missed an episode, you missed an episode. Yeah, I think it being on Disney Plus was such a godsend because like as much as I
Yeah.
was religious about it, I know there were episodes here and there I missed to get to sit down and take it all back in. But there were a lot of people who did that who
Yeah.
like they knew of the animated show but maybe watch an episode here and there. But then after X-Men '97 came out, they were like, oh, okay. Okay, I get it. Now I got to go back and like binge the entire original run.
Yeah. And I love that it opened up a whole new group of fans too, just with the reboot. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Are you playing the theme song in your child's room at all now that he's 2 years old, just like starting the indoctrination
Yeah.
process or
The indoctrination has already started. He can say he knows Wolvie by sight. If he sees him on anything, he'll go, Wolvie, Wolvie. And Scott is Sock. He knows Jean and Storm. And I'm working on like Colossus, but that's a harder word for him to say, but he tries. He does try.
hmm.
But I have posters in his room. I've got there's that infamous pool party
Oh, the Jim Lee
poster.
one, yeah.
Yes, yeah. My husband actually found one on eBay that wasn't even creased. Somehow, like it's perfect. It's in the most perfect condition. And so he made a frame for it and we put it in his room. And then we've got this what if issue that's also beach themed because my son's room is kind of like SoCal, like there's palm leaves and um natural wood and stuff. So um we kind of went with like the like at the beach or the pool kind of vibe for him. But I had to put the little X-Men flair on it. So yeah, definitely already getting him into that world. And I really, really hope that it sticks and he wants to watch all the things because that would be just the dream.
Yes, that's some next level bonding. That is some
Yeah,
next level bonding, multi-generational. Yeah, and
yeah,
I think that you're right. Like that was what was so great about X-Men '97 is that it brought a whole new like batch of fans into the fandom that, especially because it was so good,
yeah,
right? Like had that show been terrible or boring, it wouldn't have done anything. But the fact that it was like so good that you have a lot
yeah,
of people from I think from the movies, real casual fans. They'll know who Cyclops is. They'll know who Wolverine is. They know
yeah.
who Storm is. But then to sit down and like because that show, I mean, it just really grabs you and drags you in.
It really does. And I mean, just the amount of content that they were able to cover in just that first season, I mean, that's just fantastic. So I mean, there's so much out there for them to pull from and it feels like we covered everything but still just scraped the surface. So I'm excited to see where season 2 goes because the way that the first season ended just, yeah, I need more.
Yeah, such
I
a
don't want to wait.
cliffhanger.
Yeah.
And we don't know. And you're right. Like there were times where there were like episodes where they would take a storyline in the comics that took years to develop and fully drop and they
Yeah.
would just like knock it out in an episode of X-Men 97, which if he'd have told me prior to that that's what they were going to do, I have to admit I'd have been like, "Oh God, they're going to rush through this thing. It's not going to
Yeah.
be good." But then when you sit and watch the episode, I mean, they did that whole thing like with Inferno and the Goblin Queen, and
Yeah.
you're just like, it was really, really good.
It was. I feel like they adapted it in a way that it just made more sense for TV, that kind of format. Even the Goblin Queen story, there are things that I wish we could have seen with it, but I do like the way that the way that they ended it, because it kind of gave justice to Maddie, and it was a happier ending despite, it wasn't, super happy, but it was a much happier ending than the comics. And I like the way that they did that, where they put their own spin on things, but they still respected the source material. So
Hmm.
I feel like they
Yeah,
kind of, yeah,
yeah, I think so. I think it's because at the end of the day, they understood the spirit that made the original story good, and they could change
yeah,
other things but preserve that and have it still turn out phenomenal, even if you're making major changes to the story. The
yeah,
gist of what it is that made it so great was still there.
yeah, absolutely.
Hmm. I know we had talked a little bit on like DM and whatnot in terms of like your background when it comes to the X books. For the
Yeah.
listeners, where's that at? I know you had said that in COVID time you started on House of X, Powers of X, but was there any prior to that, or was that with your first dipping your toes into it?
Yeah, so I had kind of gotten into it when I was in high school. I this might be divisive, but my gateway into the fandom was through the movies.
Mhm.
So that was my first exposure to it. And then so that first movie, I was about 9 or 10 when it came out. So when I got a little older into like junior high school age, my friends and I were just obsessed with it, and we just wanted to read anything we could, but we also didn't have a lot of money, so we, went to the internet for a lot of stuff. But um, I kind of got into it at that point, so it was kind of like the ultimate X-Men time frame is about when I jumped in, but I wasn't reading consecutive stories. I was just kind of bouncing around, if I found something that was discounted at the bookstore. Um, and then I kind of got out of it just with life. I went and started college and just started a career and just didn't really have the time or bandwidth for it. I was in a long-term relationship too with my now husband. So I kind of fell out of it. I still watched the movies and was interested in it in other ways, but not devoted to the comics. And then House of X, Powers of X came out, and I don't know what made me go and get it, but I did. And I just remember thinking I need more of this. And so I went and I got a subscription to Marvel Unlimited, and that's about when the pandemic started. And I had a lot more time than I ever had before, and I just kind of went back to the 60s and just kind of read as much as I could through the Marvel Unlimited app and just worked my way up to where I had started.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, there should definitely be no divisiveness there. Like, absolutely not. Like, however people
Yeah.
get into it, and everybody has a different story, and I love it. I'm one of those people who can sit there and say, like, well, I've been a fan since 1987, but
Yeah.
like you, I had a real ebb and flow with the comics. Like, I was really hardcore into it, and then for a couple of years, I was out of it because life, back
Right.
into it, back out of it again, college, into it, back,
Yeah.
So even though I've been a fan since 87, I'll freely admit there's like years, like batches of time of the comics I didn't read, and somebody would totally school me in a Jeopardy game on it as much as I do an X-Men podcast. But
Yeah.
I think that as far as the X-Men community, that's something that's really super important. If somebody that
Yeah.
you don't know walks up to you today and they had never, ever, ever heard of the X-Men at all, and they watched an episode of X-Men 97 and told you they absolutely love the X-Men fan or love the X-Men and were a huge X-Men fan and they wanted to get into the comics, every single X-Men fan should with open arms embrace. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the community. That's what I love about the X-Men community.
Yeah. No, me too. It's been very welcoming, and it's something, the online community in particular is something I'm newer to just since starting my cosplay journey, and I guess since the pandemic. And I'm just blown away by how friendly and welcoming. And I think it's a huge testament to like even the Uncanny Experience where you're meeting people that maybe you've only like sent a couple of comments on, you've posted on their pic, or, you've had a couple of interactions on their stories, but we all have that one thing in common, and that just it already creates a bond. And so there's already something you have in common with them. And it kind of takes that barrier of trying to get to know somebody and maybe the fears of making that first move to say hi or start a conversation. And so it felt like everybody knew each other and everybody had been friends for the longest time. It was like the biggest family reunion, and there was just so much positivity. And I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, you nailed it like on the head. And that's always been the way I've described it because people who haven't gone to Uncanny would ask me like what's it like? And every time I said this first year, I say it second year, like I don't call it a con. I call it a family reunion and some of the people there you don't even know you're related to yet. Like that's
Yeah.
that is the best way to put it. I think you're right. That's it's a one of the things why I love the X-Men community so much is that there's such a sense of family, a sense of found family, if
Yeah.
that makes sense, you know. And it's unfortunate because there are some fandoms, I hate to say it as much as I'm a Star Wars fan, like the Star Wars fandom could just be toxic sometimes, like to the point where you don't
Yeah.
even want to comment your opinion anywhere on anything, you know,
Yeah.
because it gets really bad. But thankfully, the X-Men community is very, very, very free of that. It's very accepting, it's very loving. Not that there aren't bad apples here and there, let's be honest, people are
Yeah.
people. But I think that the Uncanny Experience was probably like the lightning rod to like show off how great the community is because that was like
Yeah.
not to sound weird, folks, but it was a giant love fest, is literally what it
Yeah.
felt like, you know?
It really was. It really was. And in the best way. I mean, it's the reason why you said, you wish it was, more often than just once a year, or, we just need more of it because it's such an uplifting feeling and you just want to bottle it and keep it forever.
hmm Yeah, yeah. It's an amazing feeling. I had a
Yeah.
joke and I didn't end up doing it. I should have. Is that I wanted to just bring a bunch of mason jars and just like jar the air and
Yeah.
like and then start shipping them off to friends like afterwards. Like, hey, open this up and take a smell and you'll remember what Uncanny Experience was like, you know?
I love that.
So that being said, I assume you're coming back for next year.
Yes, I will move heaven and earth to be there after this one. I was already trying to figure it out after I was leaving because it is a bit of a hike for me. I'm in Virginia, so but it's still, it was like a 2 hour plane ride, and I mean, the airport was so close to the venue. Everything was just right there. So it wasn't so much confusing with logistics of transportation and food and all that because there was just everything in that little bubble.
hmm
But yeah, I definitely I'm already trying to think about what I would even cosplay next year, but I have time, so
that time goes by
yeah,
quicker than you think, as you well
it
know.
does. Yeah.
Do you have ideas that you want to share publicly, or are you keeping it close to the chest right now?
Well, I was pleasantly surprised with how my film gene was received there. I really didn't know what to expect because I know the first year they did have Daniel Cudmore, who was Colossus, so there was a little bit more of that movie element to it. But this year it was pretty much just the 97 series and then the comics. So I thought I'm gonna be in this film costume. There might be people that think that that's like, it's not the same um whatever, but I was surprised by that. So I've kind of been playing around with X2 Gene. I know it's not much different from the first film, but I could wear a wig. I had to grow out my bangs for that one, and it was just it was a pain. It was worth it, but a pain.
hmm
Um and that one might be fun. I don't know. I love her like flippy 2003
Yeah.
hair. And then something
Yeah.
from the comics. I'm just not sure what.
Okay. The yeah, that X-Men first movie X-Men like Jean Grey cosplay that you did, that looked phenomenal.
Thank you.
How'd all that come together?
Yeah, I've always wanted to have that costume in some way my whole life. I've always wanted it. Because because again, the movies were my window into it. So I thought they were so cool. And so my husband helped me make it. We basically took um, just like a spandex bodysuit. And then I bought two of them because I wanted the fabric to match. And I'm not quite at the skill level to like make it from the ground up. So we were able to use the second one to cut the pieces for the shoulder pads. Because there's a little bit of a detail there where it's kind of ribbed, on the shoulder for some reinforcement. And then there's some hip padding too, and then the belt. So all the fabric matched, and we just kind of cut the patterns and then sewed it all together and added the piping. She has green piping, which I actually, for some reason, my memory was always that she always had the red, which is what she has in the second film. But it was green in the first film, which I actually love more because it's more of her classic color, just more muted. Um, and I had grand ideas of making some kind of like toad slime, like prop, like 3D printed
Yeah.
or something. But it just didn't work out.
Oh, that would have been cool. We always,
Yeah.
yeah, podcasters love to do that. We get delusions of grandeur of what it's going to be, and then
Yeah.
eventually we have to start cutting corners as it gets
Yeah.
closer and closer and closer.
Yeah.
Um, and now as a prop maker, you got my mind going, how would I do that toad thing? Hmm.
Yeah. My husband was thinking of like some kind of epoxy and then putting like they sell powder dye that you can kind of mix with it.
Hmm.
And so we had bought all the things, we just never. So it might still happen one day,
Yeah, yeah,
but then yeah,
epoxy.
it's
Yeah, I think epoxy or silicone, probably a clear silicone. And same thing with the powder. With the silicone, you can buy like almost like food dye to put in and mix
yeah,
in some green and a little, just a touch of black. And it could,
yeah.
ooh, yeah. Gee, now my mind's going to be on that for a while. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah,
Why is it?
if
Go
you
ahead.
think
I'm
of a good
sorry.
if you think of a good way to do it, let me know.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm all about it. I love prop building. I was like the person who
Yeah,
got into cosplay backwards because most people get into cosplay and then have to figure out how to make stuff. I got into it
yeah.
because I got into 3D printing, primarily to 3D print like miniatures for like D&D and stuff.
Oh,
And
that's
then
cool.
through YouTubing like tutorial videos on 3D printing because I was having issues with mine is when I came across
Yeah,
all these cosplayers who are making like 3D printing like wearable full size Iron Man armors and stuff, and my brain just like exploded. I'm like, you can
yeah.
do. So I got into prop building, which then got me into cosplay. So it was like I went backwards with it. So I always consider myself like a prop maker first and a cosplayer second. Um,
I love that
but
though because then you come to it with that extra knowledge and you're not having to, like you said, figure it out once you've
right.
got the bug. And I was like, now where do I go from here?
Yeah, although it does happen, there are plenty of times where I'm like, oh, I would love to do this, but 3D printing that's not practical. That means I have to use silicone. I don't know anything about silicone, and then I spend days down the
Yeah,
rabbit hole on YouTube figuring out how to do it. And then you've got that in your toolbox, and then you move on to the
yeah,
next one.
yeah. And it maybe will come in handy later, maybe not, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
in there.
yeah, it definitely does. So if your
Yeah.
husband's helping you with all the prop making stuff, how come he's not cosplaying? What's the story?
I don't know, he's not as into it. He loves that I do it. He fully supports it, but it's just not his thing. I was kind of the nerdier of the two of us when we met, and I've kind of indoctrinated him as well into X-Men and Marvel and just now he's a big fan of the art though more than anything. So when we go to a convention, he's less focused on the cosplay. He wants to look at the artist alley. He wants to meet the artists and get variant covers, and
Mhm.
that's his favorite. But he has kind of an artistic background, so that's kind of where his main obsession is with it, I
Yeah.
think. He has a big appreciation for the art, so
Well, good for him. Good for
yeah.
him. Yeah, and you never know. Give it time. My wife is very similar
Yeah.
the same way. She thought cosplay was cool. She thought it was awesome that I did it. And then, one day, we were a couple months away from a con, and I'm like, hey, I know you say you're too busy and yada yada yada, but if you cosplayed this, it would go really great with my, oh, okay, yes, I'll give it a try. And now she's like obsessed. The amount of
And
pictures of
shaving her head for it. I
yes,
mean, that's
shave
dedication.
right. Yeah.
It's
You
amazing.
can't doubt her dedication if she shaved her head skin bald to do
Yeah,
Cassandra Nova at Uncanny. That was pretty unreal.
absolutely unreal. She nailed it.
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
she was probably one of the biggest hits of the weekend,
Yeah,
honestly.
and personally, I adored it because that was the first time her and I have gone to a con, and I'm not like acting like head honcho or anything, but between doing the podcast and
Yeah.
being known in the community as a cosplayer, normally when we would go to cons, I would cosplay and she would sort of like walk with me and sort of be handler and help take pictures and that kind of stuff. This was the first time
Yeah.
I might as well have been chopped liver, like because all spotlights were on her and it was awesome. And I'd have to ask people all the time, has anybody seen my wife? Oh yeah, she was up on the third floor somewhere. Okay, I'll go find her.
I love that though. I bet that meant so much to her just to have
Oh,
that experience. And
absolutely. And it was her first time in a cosplay competition.
was it really?
Yeah, yeah, she had never done one before. She was in at the
Wow.
one at Uncanny. How would you have any interest in doing any of those in the future?
I so I'm torn because I'm more introverted and I get into my head like I don't know if I'll have like enough charisma to do it or I'm gonna make a fool of myself or I don't know. So I had actually signed up for the one at Uncanny and then I just ended up not doing it because I just talked myself out of it. But one day I'll try.
Yeah, yeah, you should. Especially at Uncanny, because it's such a
Yeah.
great atmosphere. And I wasn't in the cosplay competition, obviously, but wife was,
Yeah.
and yeah, getting to sit there is like everybody came down with all varying degrees of costumes. Everything from
Yeah.
store bought and made a few modifications to completely made from the ground up. And everybody was so loving and so accepting. And it is what it is. Go enjoy it, go
Yeah.
have fun, show off your nerdy. Like every single person there at some point in time said to themselves, I don't know if I should do this.
Yeah,
And then
that's
they did
true.
it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's just that first time, just, pushing yourself to do it. That's the
Mm.
hardest.
Well, and part of the problem is that now you're on a podcast talking about it.
Yeah.
So everybody out there listening who's coming to next year at Uncanny, we're all going to ask Sarah the first day, you're in the cosplay competition, right?
Yeah.
I am
But
not above
maybe
peer pressure.
the peer pressure would help, I think.
Okay.
If I'm there and I'm like surrounded by people pumping me up for it, I think I could probably do it.
Yeah, I'm going to get
Yeah.
t-shirts made.
No.
You know, Sarah Starrshine for the cosplay competition. I'm going to hand them out to different friends, and we're all just going to
Yeah.
wear them. I guarantee it. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, we are like up against the clock. We're running out of time. These always go so fast when it's a great conversation. So thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Me
Um,
too.
People can find you where?
I'm on Instagram. I'm Sarah with an H underscore Starshine with two R's.
And there it is, folks.
Yeah.
Sarah, she's a fantastic person. We had that great thing at Uncanny where like I think we had been following each other for a while on Instagram. Like you said earlier,
Yeah.
comment on each other's stuff here and there, and then it was like, oh my God, there you are. And I'm still upset with myself that it took till like the end of the day Sunday for me to be like, you are Sarah, right?
I
And
know.
yeah, and the only reason I was like
Yeah.
positive it was you is because you had posted something in your Instagram story of the cosplay you were wearing. And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's 100% her. I got to go over and say hey and yeah. So next year now we'll go into it know that like hey, we know
Yeah.
each other now. It's cool.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm very glad that you approached me and said hi and we took a selfie because I am the same way. I just get in my head and I think that's who that is, but I don't want to
Yeah.
bother them, but then I regret it. So
Yeah, I'm the same way, and I run into the thing where even though I'm very, very extroverted, I also have like extreme ADHD, and situations like that just turn into hurricanes in my brain. Where I'll like my eyes will go by, and I'll see somebody, I'll be like, "Oh, I think that's so and so," and like literally as the thought goes through my head, I'm already onto something else, and then by the time I get home, I'm
yeah.
mad at myself for like the 3,000 times I didn't stop and say hey to somebody, and then you feel like a jerk because maybe they're thinking, well, maybe they didn't actually want to meet, and like, no, I absolutely did,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, but yeah, now we know, and we can look forward. And I don't know if you've caught it. This is going to air afterwards, but this coming Saturday, Topher and Dylan and Chandler have an Instagram live where they're talking about all the details for Uncanny
Ooh.
2025. So I'm anxiously awaiting to see what kind of news we're going to get out of that.
Yeah, me too. I'm definitely gonna check that out.
Yeah. Well, all right, folks. Once again, this is Sarah. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me. We are going to get out of here, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in, watching how whatever channel it is you're getting to this podcast through. I love you. I appreciate you. And yeah, we will talk to you all another time.